レイン、ずいぶん慣れてきたようだね。ワイヤードとの付き合い。
うん。
一つだけ忠告しておこう。
え？
ワイヤードはあくまでも情報を伝達し、コミュニケーションするための空間、リアルワールドと混同してはいけない。忠告の意味、わかるかな？
違うよ。
え？
そんなに教会ってきちんとしてないみたいだよ。もうすぐ中に入れるんです。フルレンジ、フルモーション、私、メタファライズ。心配しないで。私は私だもの。
そう。
During that time, like, you weren't even thinking about the show.
Nah, I couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't even tell you what song he was singing at that time. I couldn't tell you nothing, bro. Because at this point, I'm thinking about my life. Like, damn, you know, I just seen that shit, and at the same time, I'm still trying to stay afloat. So he tries to continue the song, bro. On Everything I Love. When I kid you not, when the song starts back up, the crowd hypes back up. When I tell you, my right side broke free. Like, I'm like, you know, I almost fall. So I'm like grabbing the person beside me, like trying not to fall. Man, when I tell you I look to my right on Everything I Love, bro, I seen a pile of bodies. I seen a pile of people laying on top of people. Not just one layer. It was people on top of people, and these people were unconscious. Already, this is within the first 15 minutes of this whole, bro. And when I looked down, the first thing I seen was like, it was a white girl. And she had blonde hair, bro, and her eyes like was just rolling, fool. Like she was like trying to come to it, and her eyes was just rolling. Next to her is like a Hispanic dude face down. It's like a black dude beside her. Like, I'm talking about people on top of people, bro. It's like a reverse mosh pit of people on top of people.
Every generation has its own group of people who march to the beat of a different drummer. In the 50s, it was the beatniks. In the 60s, it was the hippies. Today, it is the punk rockers. Now, I guess we've all seen them at one time or another. The spiked orange hair, the lethal-looking jewelry, lots of leather. This morning, we've invited 5 punk rockers to come here and explain and tell us why they are the way they are. And we'll get started with that in just a moment.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
Designers on there too.
Kanye West, every good music artist involved.
Okay.
Every good music artist involved. Every good music artist involved.
There you go.
It's like amazing, and you know we got like our illest friends, and it's gonna be like one of the illest projects. And one thing I can say about this project is gonna be very youthful, very youthful, straight to the point. Like, you know, like the illest ever, man. Like just the best album.
But real quick, speaking of which, what does that mean, youthful?
That means like
energetic.
that means like the kids that are not on the radio all the time, who really have the clubs going ridiculous.
They're the ones.
It really has the fields going crazy. That's what this album is for.
There you go.
But I just kind of want to like bring alive like the kids and turn them into like animals. Like, you know, create the real life circus for like the kids, like a playground.
Pick up a discount coupon from Burger King and save $2.50 on your Astroworld ticket. Unbelievable.
It's Weekend Weekends at Astroworld. So much fun, so close to home.
Hey, brother.
Please welcome Travis Scott.
Travis Scott.
At Travis Scott's Astroworld.
Travis Scott.
Travis Scott.
Travis Scott.
Travis Scott.
Travis Scott.
Travis Scott. Breaking right now, tragedy at Astroworld Festival. At least 8 people dead and hundreds more hurt during a concert.
From the moment the doors to Astroworld opened, there was chaos at NRG Park. At 2 p.m., a stampede of concertgoers exploded through security gates, with dozens being trampled in the process. As the clock ticked down to Travis Scott's arrival, tens of thousands of fans crammed into the venue to see the rap star perform.
Where your feet were placed is where your feet stayed the whole night.
Concertgoers told NBC News that around 8:30 p.m. the crowd began to compress and push, making moving, even breathing, difficult.
5, 4, 3, 2. As soon as that countdown went to 0, it was just my rib cage was so squished that I couldn't expand my chest, expand my lungs to catch a breath.
I kept screaming like help, like I'm good.
At 9:42 p.m., Travis Scott pauses the concert midway through a song and asks security to help someone who's gone unconscious. At almost the exact same time, part of the crowd can be heard chanting, "Stop the show," as a member of the security team alerts the staff to multiple people without pulses. More than 30 minutes after a mass casualty event was declared, 8 people in the crowd died that night, their ages ranging from 14 to 27.
Since I was 6, I wanted to be a fucking wrestler. The Hardy Boys was fucking amazing. X-Pac was like my idol. So performances, I always wanted to make it feel like it was the WWF or some shit. It's all about the rage and just the vibe and expression. Yeah.
The raging is pretty amazing, I'll give you that.
He says the so-called rage culture has typically been seen with rock bands, but it has been a unique element for Travis Scott since the beginning of his performance career, and it thrives on the chaotic energy at concerts or music festivals.
I think for a lot of these fans, when we talk about rage culture, it's a positive thing for them. We see these fans talking about being in the crowd, and we see a guy on crutches and people injured, and talking about the experience of being in his show.
On Monday, Houston Police Chief Troy Finner says he approached Travis Scott and the head of his security to address concerns about public safety and Scott's messaging on social media before Scott's performance on Friday. In 2019, people reportedly rushed the security barricades at Astroworld Festival, similar to what was seen earlier in the day on Friday.
I think because not just him, but any artist that kind of has an audience like that, because they build this culture that's kind of, because there's this culture built on chaos and kind of frenzy and free-for-all, when things actually start happening, sometimes those people can't discern what's serious from what's not. We
don't be thinking about like no sad shit. We just do it for that reason. That's what we do it for. So we want for them to know like that's the reason. This shit ain't about like no clothes. This shit ain't about like who dressed the best. This ain't no fashion week, nigga. This ain't no for them press, for them release. I don't like interviews. I don't like pictures. I don't like showing my face, man. I just want to go out there, get lit, man, maybe jump off this shit. And one day, when it's time, when the nigga calls me up, it's like, boom. I inspired the fucking billion motherfuckers.
Another one of my brothers with me tonight. For the new generation.
Me and my brother used to share this joint right here. My older brother. He autistic though. This is how he used to be in here.
This is Jacques Webster II, born April 30th, 1991, in the South Park neighborhood of Houston, Texas, also known by the names Travis Scott, Cactus Jack, and LaFlame. Insecurity, uncertainty, and instability seemed to form Webster's early life in Houston. From living with his grandmother until the age of 6 in South Park, one of the most dangerous regions in Houston, then moving to live with his parents in Missouri City thereon, a nearby affluent suburb in 180 change of pace and space. One could assume the experience of discontent and despair a young child endured. Very little is known about those several years of early Jacques' life, but much is responsible for the later development of Jacques the man, and now Travis Scott, the mega rap star. For the greater part of Jacques' life, material comforts and functioning two-parent home would describe his formative upbringing as a blessing. From cushy beginnings, Jacques experienced the world, How would Jacques Webster II become Travis Scott? To many a mystery, to some a curse, and to others a strategically organized feat of corporate interest. Musicality, a blood-borne aspect of Jacques' natural abilities, is described by his father and grandfather, both musicians, passing down a genetic precedent for an ear for sound and the arrangement of beats and rhythm. An overall interest in performance and a passion towards the basic tenets of entertainment. Of course, culture has played a major role in Jacques' formulation of interests and pursuits. Raised in Houston, a cultural capital and style juggernaut in the world of rap music, Jacques could not have been developed in a more unique and endearingly bizarre place. A thirst for fame and mass influence is an irrational thirst, but something happened over those several developmental years for Jacques that rendered him parched and empty. From his first drum set as a young child, to digital equipment and synth waves later on, Jacques would make it a life mission to make it, as it were. Not only would he make it, he would break it. This is the story of how it all happened. Jacques Webster II could easily be any of us. The real question is, who and what is Travis Scott?
Is a multi-platinum selling music artist and entrepreneur who's collaborated with everyone from Drake and The Weeknd to Michael Jordan and Mayor McCheese. His supersized single is called Franchise. It features Young Thug and MIA. We'll hear that from him later. Please welcome Travis Scott.
Travis Scott is a new generation rap icon, most known for his record sales smashing album Astroworld, released in 2018. Creating an uproar of excitement in the music industry, even surpassing the sales of industry veteran and rap icon Drake that same year. But his mass appeal and scene success does not begin there. We must go back to the release of his debut album, Rodeo, of 2015. Under the T.I. label Grand Hustle, featuring massive industry names like Quavo, 2 Chainz, Future, The Weeknd, Chief Keef, Kanye West, Justin Bieber, and Young Thug. By 2015, Scott had accomplished the position very few artists in hip-hop history had experienced. A debut album decorated with the industry's biggest names, backed by one of the industry's largest distributors, Sony Entertainment. La Flame had made it. Specifically with the critical acclaim of his hit single, Antidote, Scott became a rap household name, and some would say overnight. Shockingly, and many today would argue suspiciously, Travis Scott was virtually unknown in the industry a couple years prior. How does an artist go from nobody to A-list in a matter of months? Let's do some background work and take a historical perspective into the formula that would produce a La Flame. How does someone accomplish this? One way could be, though rare, some form of peculiar or extraordinary talent. Another is the tried and true presence of industry ties or connections. The "it's all about who you know" idiom. With regard to Jacques, the latter demonstrates the lion's share of his accomplishments. This isn't to say Jacques is not a talented creative, but Travis Scott is not Jacques Webster II. But we will come back to that later. Indeed, He is extremely talented with an ear for production that is rarely matched, though his lyrical skill as an MC has always been subpar at best, and this excessive, almost dependence on voice modulation through the auto form known as auto-tune has become somewhat of a crutch. To add, his lack of any aesthetically original contribution to the culture and industry gives more credence to the idea that mere timing and connections have given him the golden spoon and platinum throne on which he rests his designer genes. Though many would also argue Scott is not a traditional MC and is in fact and essentially a producer, a maker of emotional elements and sound environment found in musical landscapes and sonic mood. A sonic warlock, if you will, an auteur, beyond the basic trappings of penned and papered MCs. One that actually understands the fabric of music, mood, and vibration, not limited to what can be said with mere language, but what can be felt within the immersive frequencies of tone and pitch. Possibly this could partly describe some of the mass appeal his music has garnered, especially considering the ethereal, infectious, and mood-heavy nature of tracks like Butterfly Effect, Goosebumps, and Antidote, for example. But again, and with that being said, how does an artist go from nobody to A-list in a matter of a string of months? Let's do some background work and take a historical perspective into the formula that would produce La Flame. Interestingly, Jacques would begin his journey into entertainment as a theater kid in high school. He would also pick up the art of rap and beat production. Between 2008 and 2009, Jacques began to dabble in the arena of beat production and rap identity creation with his first two amateur projects, The Graduates and then The Classmates, who many say gave Jacques the connections directly into the industry, namely through the collaboration of A$AP Ferg of A$AP Mob. In 2009, Jacques and OG Chess put out their project called The Classmates, releasing their first works on the monumental website of the time, myspace.com. Then a blur exists for about a year or so. Then by 2011, Jacques Webster II is Travis Scott, working on his first official project, Owl Pharaoh, with the assistance of Lex Luger, Kanye West, Mike Dean, and Young Chop, all under the supervision and bankroll of T.I. and Grand Hustle Incorporated. The album would not be dropped until May 2013, yet 2 months prior to its release, with little more to be known by than a video and single called Lovesick, a complete ripoff of Kanye West's style and sound, he was already nominated as an XXL 2013 freshman. No initially developed fan base, online or in his locale, no long-term mixtape grind, no endured stripes. His freaky acceleration to prominence in a saturated and finicky industry is mind-boggling. Some would even believe it was all by design, and backed by major corporate interest and industry culture creation networks. When the proper analysis is provided, Travis Scott's rise to ultra fame is openly described by a creative and ambitious yet corporately guided venture and capital, assisted by industry helping hands and the biggest names in the music world. La Flame was the hottest name in hip-hop by 2018. It appeared as if massive armies of fans and ragers were built in a day. There is something fascinating about the 2010s that could explain the current level of celebrity worship and identity branding, cookie-cutter culture, copycats and clones, TikTok trends setting reality, social relating boiled down to emojis and memes, where doing it for the gram is a treasured rite of passage. Not to say our internet culture is all bad, it is just different with different consequences. we must remember even spiritual awakenings are happening over the World Wide Web connections. It truly is the new way of things amidst the Internet of Things. Yet the 2010s provided a new corner of creativity that spawned an entire new era and new generation. And if we are to understand the development of the brand Travis Scott, we must understand the techno-cultural wave that carried him to corporate creative celeb shores. IOMT. We can call it the Internet of Musical Things. If the Internet of Things is described by the data-driven and digitally connected world of things, or physical objects integrated into the Internet, then IOMT represents the moment music production, instruments, and communication became an integral part, especially with regard to culture. Music, its messaging, and its aesthetics help shape culture, and the IOMT, or Internet of Musical Things, accelerated this process. It diversified and even warped its product, and turned culture creation into an automated social system of immersive culture worlds, scenes, movements, and vibes that could be best explained by the words rapid and fluid. With rapid fire, new artists, con artists, fans, and fanatics were pumped out of the internet faster and wider than most people could even keep up with. The birth of the moment began in late 2009 at the height of two significant websites, SoundCloud and MySpace, and reached its maturity in 2010. The Internet of Musical Things describes the convergence of new technologies, people, and the internet during the 2010s that produced not only new types of music, but completely new and foreign representations of culture, communication, expression, and identity. This era literally created new types of people, unlike any generation prior. A meta-world culture of internet kids, setting the stage for what is to come later, the virtual world culture within the metaverse. By 2010, we witnessed new technology, new people, and a new social environment. The new technology provided new forms of musical production and productivity. New people provided new artists and audiences, whilst the internet provided the digital ecosystem that we all would inhabit. Technology. Technologically, the music scene broadened due to the new access everyday people had to production tools. This new access came in the form of higher internet speeds and broadened Wi-Fi networks, better computer processing in laptops, and of course affordable and sometimes free new and improved DAWs, or simply computer editing software. There also was a growth in an analog to digital integration, MIDI instruments, and multifaceted communication. Lastly, and possibly most important, this was the period the iPhone became not only more common, but experienced an upgrade in functionality with its 3GS model, setting the tone and precedent for precisely what we are experiencing today via our modern application-based experience. By 2010, you didn't need a big studio with expensive or elaborate equipment, industry connections, or extensive musical talent to produce music, to find samples, or to access massive libraries of sounds. All you needed was time, drive, internet, and a laptop, plus a decent mic, and you could build an audience via simply posting your production instantly on the web. If the blogs began to promote your art, you could create a buzz and even become a sensation very quickly. Though the other side was you could be also very quickly buried in the black hole of internet sensation wannabes, since the access to content and production sources was extremely vast. Standing out was difficult, if not nearly impossible, unless one had helping hands and connections as assistants. This brings us to the next facet of the Internet of Musical Things, the birth of massive social media communities and the blogosphere. The disruptive digital environments that uprooted the traditional recording industry and transformed what it means and requires to be an artist. Before there were applications like Instagram and TikTok, there were social media websites like MySpace, Tumblr, and YouTube. Social media provided massive new audiences for creatives, but it also united like-minded people of related interests, echo chambers if you will, globally, instantly, and infinitely.
Greatest martial arts
invite you on a sneak preview tour of Astroworld.
A growing number of children are spending more time on computers than they are with their friends and family. It's not uncommon to find children who spend as much as 5-6 hours a day online. As 10 News reporter Leanne Kim shows us, parents are finding it tough to get their kids to sign off.
The data-driven information age had caused a cultural and social shift unlike any in the history of human civilization. Between 2010 and 2013, the new digitized cultural ecosystem was born. This outburst of converging technology, people, and information had an immense impact on the music industry, music production, and music as networks of subgenre scenes and waves. Micro-communities of aesthetics and vibes began to pop up everywhere. A gloriously new and strange and very postmodern mixture of retro imagery and futuristic appeal transformed the internet, and in the process transformed music. Mashup, meta-genre soundscapes and subcultures began to form identity groups in pockets of the internet. During this period, we began to witness the integration of genre, mainly a mashing of goth, punk, metal, hip-hop, techno, and R&B. A new revival of analog sounds and equipment, distortion and lo-fi atmospheres mixed with synths and 808 bass, as nostalgia graced the screens of millions across the earth. From this mashup would come new genres like chillwave, vaporwave, witch house, and hypnagogic pop varieties. Big names of the era and leaders of this new age movement in music were Ariel Pink's Haunted Graffiti, Crystal Castles, Chuck Person, James Ferraro, Little B, and later figures like Space Ghost Perp and Young Lean. This new wave of technologically induced sound could not have survived without social media application and support. The power button was pushed with the success of the website SoundCloud.com. Launched in 2008, SoundCloud amassed 1 million users by 2010, and the rest is history. The site is responsible for launching the careers of some of the most popular musicians today. Others like Bandcamp and Last.fm.com also helped facilitate this burgeoning creative digital renaissance of the 2010s. Once the technology was advanced enough to make anyone and everyone a potential artist, SoundCloud provided the platform that would allow anyone and everyone the opportunity to display their artistic creations to the world.
Business has gone from an overwhelmingly physical business 10 years ago, and really that's sort of the cue was the advent of iTunes, which is now 10 years old, to now an overwhelmingly digital business. And what's changed, I think, for us is, digital was always perceived as a threat initially, and it certainly devastated the business. And the business hasn't fully recovered, but it's changed. What we provide, and again, this is where the business has changed somewhat, is we can globalise you very quickly. We can scale you very quickly. But frankly, I won't sign an act now unless they've got some kind of digital footprint.
MySpace, Tumblr, YouTube, and later Instagram would provide the social communities that would self-build massive movements and turn nobodies into icons. It is this movement that brought the world artists like Travis Scott. Just add in billion-dollar corporate backing, consecutive blog exposure by big dogs like Earmilk, Ill Roots, and On Smash, and well, you get La Flame. By 2013, Travis Scott had relished the rich and dense informational mishmash of culture, sound, and aesthetics, absorbing the density and projecting it out to the world from the offices of stiff corporate buildings. Not only new artists were created during this era, but new faithful and finicky audiences as well. A new era of internet kids with a deeply symbolic culture of image-based, vibe-heavy, self-referencing meta-worlds.
It's all about the rage and just the vibe and expression.
Precisely the information age blip culture Toffler described in his 1980s book, The Third Wave, where culture is experienced in blips and pulses of rich text, symbolism, and media content bereft of meaningful depth or history. All becomes a feeling. Everything happens at once. Eternal presence, a vibe amongst vibes, seeking the vibrational for feeling's sake. iPods and MP3s compounded the effect of culture, making the experience of vibes constant, personal, and customizable. Information was endless and was with you, on you, in your ears and heart at all times, such that it merged with identity and reshaped not just the way we listen to music and make music, but malformed the way in which we connect to it, blurring the line between the me, the I, and the music.
I mean, everybody's into their own thing. You know, I mean, there's some people are into heavy metal, some people are into being junior executives. We're into this just because this scene gives you the opportunity to be an individual, and you get to say what you want to say and do what you want to do. And if anyone disagrees with you, they can come up to your face and tell you so.
Y'all know this is the second home, right? This is where the rage goes down at. Oh my God, you already know what time it is. Y'all might as well open that shit up right now. Turn the lights on, I need to see the crowd. Chase. Turn the lights on, I want to see the crowd. Oh my God, it's glorious. Wider. Oh my God. Wider. Oh my God. Woo, woo, ah!
11 News reporter Jeremy Diesel was there tonight for the final ride. He joins us now to tell us about the end. Jeremy.
Well, that's right. It took about 2 extra hours to get folks out of the lines for those rides and out of the park. Certainly, Astroworld over the years has been known for all of its thrills and its screams. And on closing day, you can add tears to the list.
Turn out the lights, the party's over. 37 years of Houston history have come to a close.
Six Flags Astroworld shut down for good this evening.
And have some good old-fashioned family fun along the way. If it doesn't scare the life out of you or jar you to death the way the Grease Lightning or Texas Cyclone does, well, that's because it was designed that way.
Start at its beginning. The Texas State Historical Association says former Mayor Judge Roy Hoffines opened the gates to Astroworld June 1st, 1968, back when admission prices were only $3.50 for children and $1 more for adults. 7 years later, it was sold to Six Flags. New rides and attractions were added to the park in the coming years, including Batman the Escape and the Texas Tornado. But those were some of the last rides ever added to the theme park because 7 years later, it was shut down unexpectedly.
Nostalgia, pleasure and sadness that is caused by remembering something from the past and wishing that you could experience it again. A wistful or excessively sentimental yearning for return to some past period or irrecoverable condition. I guess it could be said that we all experience the phenomena of nostalgia to some degree, and some more than others. The deep yearning for return to some past period can surely be stifling and inhibiting if given too much influence over one's life. Some would say, if not self-worship or pocket-busting profits, nostalgia has been the driver for Travis Scott and his entire Astroworld vision. A concept that envisaged all of the right vibes, fear, flurries of emotion, and eternal wonder that the old days of Astroworld amusement park used to conjure. Mixed with 808 trap beats and spacey synths, the spirit of rebellion, post-pubescent angst pouring like overpriced bottles of water, unfulfilled childhoods, lights, fire, and rage expelled from disillusioned and hyperactive kidults. His ambitious vision would be brought to life. There is something about Scott as an entity and entertainer, something about Astroworld the event, that speaks to a deep-seated and specific vein within, stringing together his audience of ragers and fans. They call it vibes. Something specific about the carnality of festival, the primal approach to fun, or getting lit. Are we truly dealing with the perennial problem of escapism? Is life the true problem and Astroworld or festivities like it the actual escape plan? This all must be more than kids being kids or capitalists being capitalists. Something about this all seems to transcend what it is that we call entertainment. Something deeper, something darker lies beneath. Covered by droned-out bass, flashing lights, covered by an intoxicated, drug-induced paraconsciousness, piling on the havoc whilst piling up the bodies. In other words, there is a thin line between catharsis and chaos. A thin line the crooning, carny Travis Scott walks like a tightrope. Constructing an experience to die for, living and raging on the edge, challenging physics with his musical trapeze. It's the running of the bulls in technicolored jackets and exclusive Nikes. The Pied Piper, man as brand, facilitating mass musical social engineering. Here you have Astroworld. A nihilistic, hip-hoppy big pharma commercial and Happy Meal advert in one. As the crowd reels and roars, scrambling for their phones in mid-romp, fried texting their envious friends safe at home, stuck in reality. The question is, will you make it out of the rodeo? As they say, see you on the other side. P.S. Wish you were here.
Travis Scott, this man is just awesome. I love this, what he did for the city. He does so much for the city, he probably doesn't even know.
There's a different type of vibe here that you only see at Astrofest, and it's gonna spread across the country. Like
big crazy vibe, crazy environment. You have to be like mentally prepared. Like if you're not, you're gonna die.
The 2019 event, though a success, was far from safe and free of sustained injuries. Here we take the saying "no pain, no gain" to the deep end of the pool. It's almost as if the malignant optimism of the artist blinds him from seeing trouble when it stares him in the face. The now big-name brand Travis Scott, like Silicon Valley, was just too big to fail, it seems. Though by 2021, his third installment of the Digital World Fair turned Dionysian cult adventure, Astroworld, came to a neck-breaking halt, ending in tragedy and the dispatch of several attendees. From then on, and void of any bigger picture analysis, all you hear is, whose fault is it? The endless blame game only describes our population's lack of rational thinking, depth, and thorough understanding of reality. It's all Scott's fault. Oh, it's capitalism. No, it's the organizers. No, it's pure physics and the science behind bodies of people imitating bodies of water. Indeed, the truth of the matter is blame is an immature conclusion to pursue when such a mixed context is provided. No one or thing is to blame. It is a confluence of multiple and equally significant factors that create or design unfortunate events like this one. Factors of this world and factors not of this world. Yes, both material and immaterial, temporal and spiritual, physics and metaphysics. To argue either or contradicts reality and human history, not to mention thousands of years of philosophy, theology, and religious schools. The spiritual realm hasn't simply disappeared because now we have so-called science and the internet, or because nobody believes that stuff anymore. Just as much as our reality is dictated by natural phenomena and human action, it is dictated by supernatural presence and metaphysics existing in the spiritual realm. The ignorant do not only fear what they do not know, they deny its existence in lieu of certainty. When what one knows can only be discovered through the senses, what exists beyond the senses does not simply cease to exist. It does not simply end its direct influence on the material world. Ignorant people just choose to ignore it. Hence the term ignorance. Mixing a pathologic childlike nostalgia, occult symbology, rage, and narcissism with this type of ignorance is a recipe for disaster and grounds to create the perfect storm. This perfect storm comprises many elements: dark forces and principalities, moral decay, dissociative culture, greed and conquest, human negligence and incompetence. A true demonstration of designed destruction.
And people are tightly packed at the turnstile entrance to the Lettings Lane terrace. CCTV footage, which was being monitored by police that day, shows how the crowd outside was growing by the minute. Inside, the two centre pens of the terrace were packed, but people were in good spirits. But at 2:40, the first real sign that things were going badly wrong, with a young boy lifted clear from the crush. Superintendent Roger Marshall, who was a police officer in charge outside the ground, is clearly worried. He later said he feared fatalities could occur. Inside, everyone was heading to the jammed centre pens, despite there being plenty of room in the pens at either end of the terrace. 2:52, with the crowds building and kick-off drawing closer, the police made the decision to open the exit gate. Over the course of 5 minutes, 2,000 fans streamed through, with most of them heading straight to the centre pens. Just a couple of minutes into the game, it became clear something was wrong behind the Liverpool goal. But soon people were collapsing on both sides of the fence.
At 6 minutes past 3, police ordered the players off the pitch. But it still seemed they hadn't grasped the scale of the tragedy unfolding before their eyes. It wasn't until 12 minutes past 3 that the first medic, a St. John's ambulance volunteer, climbed over the fence onto the terrace. By then, people had already died or were dying. At the back and front of the pen, supporters were trampled in the desperation. Others tried to get out however they could. Then, at 16 minutes past 3, the first ambulance arrived pitchside. But that was already too late for 96 fans.
Hillsborough Stadium, South Yorkshire, England, April 15th, 1989. FA Cup semi-finals resulted in one of the most devastating crowd crush events in entertainment history. 97 were killed in the what scientists would call progressive crowd collapse.
Yeah, you got some people with possible serious injuries. You're going to need some fire rescue units.
The images are horrifying.
I thought we were going to die.
Also described through the physics theory fluid dynamics. According to the publication Futurism, when people are loosely packed in a crowd with fewer than 4 people per square meter, they have room to make and act on their own decisions. But when crowd density rises above 4 people per square meter, and especially to 6 or more, something strange happens. People get pressed together so tightly that they begin to move together as one unit, with waves of pressure and release. In other words, human bodies behave like a fluid. That appears to be what happened at Astroworld on Friday. The problem with the reductive nature of physical and purely materialistic explanations for phenomena is that they do not explain the full understanding of what happens in a given event. It objectively describes what is, yet fails to have the capacity to describe why exactly these dynamics happen as they do. What drives them? What truly is working outside of vague and theoretical explanations that rely on pure physics? The materialist view for reality and the human experience is always half-baked, sterile, and mechanistic. All quantity with zero quality. Try using physics, mathematics, or biology to explain consciousness. Or nostalgia, for that matter. You cannot. Aside from the premature explanations and perspectives we have been given regarding the Astroworld event, and to be sure, these types of events are not necessarily new or freak-like in nature. Many similar events, some worse than others, have occurred over the years. For example, in 1982, the Luzhniki disaster in Moscow football event that left over 100 dead. The Lima, Peru stampede in 1964 that killed hundreds. 2006 Ultra Arena stampede in Manila, Philippines that left 74 deceased. 2010 Phnom Penh stampede in Cambodia, 450 killed. 1988 Monsters of Rock at Castle Donington, 2 dead. 1991 Salt Lake City AC/DC concert, 3 dead. Roskilde Festival, Pearl Jam, the year 2000, 9 dead. Woodstock 99, 3 dead with multiple rapes and assaults, adding to the 2 dead at the original Woodstock event in 1969. And possibly the most devastating crowd crush event to date. The 2015 Hajj in Mecca, boasting millions of attendees, left thousands deceased. It is true, too many people, not enough space, will create chaotic environments. We could even simplify this entire tragedy to a massive design flaw on the parts of producers of the event that decided to create a type of celebrity fan deathmatch with cages and exit-free barricades that literally trapped fanatics in survival pits that look more like a new type of Squid Game than a music festival. Who knows, maybe this whole thing was some creepy, hostile vibed out game of death put on by the mega rich, hedging bets on which rager could forge the best escape plan and make it to the other side. But that would be crazy, right? Though deaths of this nature, or of any nature for that matter, are unfortunate and produce grief in loved ones and survivors. But something stands out about the Astroworld event, something outside of the basic crushing of fans in a sea of maddened ragers. There's a bigger picture painted outside of the deaths and the event in general. A bigger picture that displays the ill condition and dissociative state of our digital generation, the rabid appetite of our corporate music industry, and most importantly, the demonic nihilism and hedonism that rots our culture from its insides like a cancer. This is truly no longer entertainment and goes far beyond the music. It even goes far beyond the deadly design of the festival. If no one were to expire at this event, it would have been just as dark, morbid, spiritually and culturally destructive. The messaging and symbolism alone is disastrous. All it needed was the perfect storm to place enough souls on the altar of fame and glory.
Wow. Okay. You say there was an apocalyptic vibe to this festival, and it kind of had a dark feel to it. What do you mean by that? Part of it is the music that was playing just all throughout the day.
The festival theme, it had like this dystopian theme, kind of like driving fear into the crowd before like the artists even came out.
But you hadn't seen that at the other 15 shows you'd been to?
No, sir.
I'm all about the blood. You know, we gotta turn up.
The
It's blood? all about rage.
Blood?
Just like the,
Who's bleeding on stage?
I mean, I'm not bleeding, but the fans are like giving their bodies.
You know what I'm saying? The 808 exists in the lowest chakra of your body. The majority of content that's related to the 808 is killer or sexual content. The original 808s was even off pitch. So that meant it's an actual sound in the track that you don't realize is there that is flicking up your entire frequency.
I don't know. It's a bit confusing right now to be a Travis Scott fan. It's gonna change concerts forever. It'll never be. It's like the 9/11 of concerts.
Hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, black magic.
Bricks, do you believe in evil?
As an idea.
Do you believe in the power of darkness?
As a superstition.
Now there you are wrong. The power of darkness is more than just a superstition. It is a living force which can be tapped at any given moment of the night.
Creator of the event, Travis Scott. Our Zach Tawatari is there with how the first night of the two-day event is going. Zach.
Just when you think this festival can't get any bigger, it takes things to another level. But that's what Astroworld is all about. From the music to the festivities, fans say they're getting everything they expected and then some.
This world is like walking into another world.
Travis Scott is the GOAT.
Astroworld, Houston native Travis Scott's fantasy.
What's this, bro?
Come to life. From the carnival to the music to fashion that speaks volumes on its own.
I definitely wanted to stand out without doing like too much. I don't know, y'all tell me, is this too much?
A Ferris wheel, games, and huge lines.
I'm pretty sure everyone in this line expected it to be.
Set the stage for the performances that headline their tickets.
I'm super excited for SZA.
Festival goers like Jasmine Barajas have made it to all three Astroworlds.
Just for the atmosphere.
She's proud that Scott brought the event to his hometown, which has had charitable events in the week leading up to the festival.
He's done so much, and especially for the community.
And to have Astroworld back this year after it was postponed because of COVID in 2020 is a dream come true for these fans.
Be in this environment again, it's been hard, just like being stuck in the house.
An experience summed up in one word.
Unforgettable. That's definitely the best word I could put is unforgettable.
And Astroworld continues tomorrow. These fans seemingly can't get enough.
Can't get enough.
Before we get into the bigger picture, spiritual things, or darker aspects of this event, let us consider and analyze the crowd. Firstly, if we are going to be honest and rational, it is important to point out that the crowd or audience of this event and events like it are always a mixture of people. We could describe this as a concert-goer type, though many are. All attendees of Astroworld are not raging post-pubescent children with identity issues. I have provided 5 concert-goer type categories that can roughly describe this mixture of people we are referring to here. First, and of course, we have the ragers, then the casuals, next is the newbies, followed by the tagalongs, and lastly, the weekend warriors. Let's briefly describe these demographics so we can get a more fair and rational description of a 50,000 plus people festival. We will be delving a bit deeper into the realm of ragerism shortly, so for now, let's address the rest. Casuals. Casuals can be looked at as your basic garden variety concert goer, one that frequents shows and events rather detached from fandom scene obsessions. Usually more diverse in their choices of music, superficial in their approach, and tend to just enjoy the vibes and sociality of festivals. Typically abuses substances as a standard, but not in all cases, of course. Casuals make up a significant portion of events, usually the followers of trends, mainstream social media culture, progressive politics, and tend to use the term lit more than what would seem reasonable. Casuals are rarely die-hard fans, or fans at all in many cases. They are fully literate in festivalese. They tend to enjoy music of all kinds, and festivals provide an amusement park of experience that adds color to their life palette. Casuals are the most diverse group of all categories. The counterpart to the casual, and one we have left out for analysis here, is the pro. Though they are similar, the main difference between the two is that the pro is much more in touch with the intricacies of the music, bands, and mass event culture. They are much more likely to be full-bodied fans and, in some cases, fanatics. Newbies. Newbies are either first-timers or green, wet behind the ears, and inexperienced when it comes to mass events. This is the most vulnerable group. When in large number, they can create many problems due to their ignorance, fear, or overzealous nature. Overdoses, overreactions, fights, bad trips, and getting lost and afraid can be commonplace with this group. Tagalongs and weekend warriors. Tagalongs are usually first-timers that accompany casuals and do not really care to be there. They came out of pity or begged their way there so they can post live updates on Instagram. They are the most detached and inexperienced group in many cases, but not all. Some could argue, and rightly so, that this is actually the most diverse group that exists. Weekend warriors are the most rational and responsible group, aside from the pro, of course. Weekend warriors also tend to be in the older bracket of events demographics. With that being said, they tend to be the most responsible and sometimes the most experienced subgroup. Due to their relatively older age, this group tends to have a veteran status when it comes to live events. They typically have demanding careers and schedules that afford them the weekends only to unload or release built-up tension. Massive festivals provide the perfect catharsis, a respite of sorts, a breakup of the monotony career and family life can bring. Though catharsis is an aspect of mass events for all groups, the weekend warrior experiences a state of satisfaction and appreciation that is unknown to the rest, and unique unto himself. As a rule, ragers tend to be the most immature and disturbed category. Casuals and newbies tend to be the most superficial, whilst weekend warriors and tagalongs tend to be the most rational. We must remember that these categories are theoretical and rough estimations of concert-goer demographics and are by no means exhaustive, and they will always, in every case, have exception and contradiction, similar to life itself.
Even though it's like you're revolting against something, perhaps, there still is a conformity. You can see that you all basically have things in common. You do look alike. How can you say that it's an individual expression?
Ironically, as you will see in many scenes that claim a unique sense of individuality, they are often mere followers of mass trends and display rich examples of conformity in appearance and belief system. Discussing the demographics of a crowd is important because it reminds us that crowds are more than an entity or mass. They are collectives of subgroups and individuals and cannot always be treated as a singular thing. Yet the problem we arrive at is when numbers increase, the individuality of people decrease, and the group begins to behave like the thing we attempt to separate it from. A mass entity, a body of water for instance, or a dark egregore.
Drugs, man. I was like on the lean, like.
This song is possessed. There is something.
Possessed.
Really, this is possessed. In France, we say Jnouné.
It's dope.
What's the hardest thing about being LaFlame?
Keeping up with all the ember. You gotta be super talented to keep up with the ember, or you will get burnt. The flame will turn on your ass if you ain't ready.
You said you're a man of God, and when I even said that, they say your music is satanic, I saw the face that you made. Where do you think that even comes from? Travis Scott is satanic, Travis Scott is demonic.
I just think it's just things people collect, people look at the internet and they just collect and they look at things and they look at visuals and you have all these theorists and people just thinking they're looking at visuals and don't understand, just the idea of like what art may be or what you're trying to do, they're just making up your own message.
Now, the question is, are we rock and roll? And I say you're goddamn right, we rock and roll. See, rock and roll is not an instrument. Rock and roll is not even a style of music. Rock and roll is a spirit. It's a spirit. It's been going since the blues, jazz, bebop, soul, R&B, rock and roll, heavy metal, punk rock, and yes, hip hop. And what connects us all is that spirit. That's what connects us all, that spirit.
Music, technology, and sonic production can all be used as forms of magic. Indigenous chanting, drumming, the Beatles' use of thelema arts and backmasking, or Jack Parsons and his jet propulsion lab that eventually spawned the formation of NASA are three basic examples that can attest to this fact. According to Arthur C. Lehman, magic is a ritual practice believed to compel the supernatural to act in a desired way that controls events in nature. Key words for our discussion are compel, control, and supernatural. If the physical sciences were founded in material and supernatural alchemy, music production and performance is founded in sonic alchemy. As the magician aims to manipulate physical reality through metaphysical means of control, the musician does the same, yet controls the physical audience through manipulation of sonics or sounds. This is where the artist aims to create a certain type of experience, preconceived for the audience. He seeks to compel and control his audience through supernatural means. The artist becomes a type of demigod and gateway, a stage set for evocation and invocation. The audience's behavior is a manifestation of his will. This is accomplished by way of ritual and audience idolatry. Debauchery seems to be an underlying theme and shared interest of the audience at Astrofest, a Dionysian cult of the 21st century.
These fights that break out in the places, in the clubs that the bands are playing at, does the music motivate all of that?
This is accomplished by way of ritual and audience idolatry, but there exists also a scientific explanation. Here we can see how crowds may also be used for experimentation in the sciences. We can call it psychoacoustic experimentation in a controlled environment, also known as a music festival or a concert. What the heck is psychoacoustics?
What is psychoacoustics? Psychoacoustics is a term that's jumped up in prominence lately with the increased interest in immersive audio, Dolby Atmos, Apple spatial audio, lossy audio compression schemes, and the rise of audio streaming formats. As a definition, psychoacoustics is a branch of psychology that deals with the perception of sound and sound's physiological and psychological effects on humans. The reason all of this is so broad and complex is that there are two mechanisms for sound: the actual mechanical aspect of sound wave creation and propagation, and then there's also the human mechanism for sensing and perceiving that sound, which involves the physical aspects of our ears as well as the perceptive aspects of our brain. There's now image-guided surgery and other types of acoustic applications for medicine, drone flying, and more that use aspects of psychoacoustics. There are even acoustic weapons being developed that can impair, injure, and even kill. I mean, that's crazy stuff.
Even kill.
Sound waves is exactly what's carrying all of the noises which I'm making. They are measurable, they are not visible, and in fact they are not always audible. Even if they are called sound waves, there are some at either end of the spectrum which we can't hear, but we can still use. I wish I had time to go in deeper on that, because there are some rather fascinating things, especially happening at the bottom end, where even in the paranormal, very deep vibrations of infrasound can actually experience our perception of the world around us. In ultrasound, it can actually be used in places where we want to get people to get out. If we want to have young people outside a pub and we want to disperse them, we can play certain frequencies and they'll disappear, where the older ones won't, because they won't even hear it. So there's all sorts of horrible things you can do with sound with very lovely outcomes.
Just a word on music.
Music is the most powerful sound there is, often inappropriately deployed. It's powerful for two reasons. You recognize it fast and you associate it very powerfully. Music is very powerful, and unfortunately it's veneering commercial spaces, often inappropriately. I hope that's going to change over the next few years.
Now, why is this a good time to ask this question? People have been speculating about music in the mind for millennia. Plato remarked that rhythm and harmony find their way into the inward places of the soul back in 300 or 400 BC. Now, certainly when we think about the music and the brain, one of the first things that comes to mind intuitively is the role of emotion. The idea that music has strong links to emotion is very old indeed, and it's borne out by a lot of research. And music's power over the emotions really is remarkable. It's a powerful internal reward system that drives other brain systems. It's kind of an amazingly remarkable fact that tones, without meaning, without semantic associations, can have such powerful effects on our emotions. Oliver Sacks writes about this in the beginning of his wonderful book, Musicophilia. He said if a Martian came down to Earth and observed us listening to music, he'd be rather puzzled. There's no semantic messages being conveyed, there's no utilitarian function here, and yet people are being incredibly moved. And this has access to our brains starting at a very young age.
Still wasn't what we were after, and we were almost at the point of giving up. And we said, well, we'll try one more, we'll try 5. And when we tried 5 frequencies, we nearly jumped up in the air because it actually happened. The stuff that we had on the plate literally blew off the plate. So what we did then was to put a plastic, which we thought we could bind and hold together, and we put this plastic on the plate, and sure enough, it formed itself up into a form defying the pull of gravity and started to form up into a holistic form and shape, 3-dimensional. This is what we needed, this is what we wanted, because this is the basic sort of formulative structure of shape and form in the human body. So we were really onto something there.
So, in a way, then the sound creates the form.
The sound will create the form and will hold it for just as long as you want it to hold. But if you change that frequency, then it will, if you want to use a word, you will have mutation. You will change the shape. So therefore it is again correct to say, scientific fact, that as the sound, so the shape and the form. So there basically we conclude from that the human body in the form in which we see it is held in that formulative pattern and structure wholly and solely by the sound it contains and makes.
Man, we're selectively putting together the new sound to test sound waves.
We create this music, man, with like light shows, man. The people, it's like an experience. Like those sounds, like are supposed to like control the atmosphere.
The atmosphere.
Atmosphere. Are you super satisfied that now, like, you are fully an entity? You're out there now.
Man, it makes me so happy.
Point blank, period. South by Southwest, it's a lot of people that I've seen in South by Southwest, but nobody parted off of the crowd like Travis Scott. He parted the crowd like Moses. Impeccable. I mean, speak on your stage show for a minute. Like,
you know, I just try to like really bring the music alive.
We had a discussion about people in the front row. Now I know it might be harsh because there's real niggas raging back there in that pit. And you might be getting squished. But if you're a fucking rager, you don't let them squish you. You make a fucking room. Say hell yeah! Say hell yeah!
The Rager spirit is the perfect asset to chaos magic because it thrives on the extremes, the dark, and the volatile. We mustn't forget that concerts are purely spiritual in that they work mainly on frequencies of tone, volume, and pitch of the sonics, symbol, signal, and messaging of the artist, impact of light and temperature on the body and mind, mixed with energy transfer between the altar or idol and its audience.
Yeah, like, you know, I've always feel like I have a connection with my fans, you know, through the music. I feel like when they come to see me, it's not just like, oh, they come in it's like a connection.
We could add the consumption of spirits and libation and drugs to this potion. It would not be incorrect, nor an overstatement, to consider all music performances ritualistic experiences. Therefore, all events display a spirit form of their own. But all music experiences are not the same and differ widely in many cases. An example of differing behaviors of spirit would be contrasting the rager energy of a Scott concert to the Barbie energy of a Minaj concert, or Beyonce fans. Another polarizing example would be contrasting equally disturbed and entranced, though less demented, Playboy Cardi fans to, say, the cult audience of a Taylor Swift. Though they all may differ in nature of spirit, they all share an encapsulating fact. They all present celebrity worship, hive-mindedness, and idolatry.
It's all about the rage and just the vibe and expression.
It's a spirit.
But what seems to set ragers apart from the rest is an antisocial behavioral element, a dark spirit of rebellion and misanthropy, a sociopathic twinge that can be discovered strung along the extensive catalog of Scott's musical career.
I'm a rager, Mom. I can't help it.
It's pushing. You can't really do anything because it's like hundreds of people pushing their weight against you. It's like nothing you can do.
If any of you contribute or encourage rushing the gates, you're a part of the problem. It's not cool. It's not okay. That's gotta stop now. Like, dude, it's just disgusting that there's people that are willingly, like, knowingly putting other people in harm's way and seeing other people getting hurt, not caring at all, just because they want to buy some clothes. Like, y'all.
That girl was passed out, we had to carry out. She was like gone, like she wasn't conscious at all.
People were legitimately trying to mosh pit to anything. Like, they weren't giving these crowds to get hectic, and they don't respect women. They just don't at all. And that's the one thing I hate, is because I could see it all.
And it was quick. I'm talking, guys, under a minute to 2 minutes maybe. This is how quick it was that you just start seeing people just falling. And nobody was helping them up. You know, you could hear people try to help, push back, move. Like, people, you know, people are like, hold on, somebody's on the ground and stuff. But, you know, again, you're at a concert. It's loud. There's smoke, fire, you know, in the air. It's dark, it's light. Like, it's so crazy. There's so much going on that, like, you know, anybody's plea for help that was falling, like, you kind of did disregard it. You didn't hear them. You didn't see them.
I was in the crowd. Oh, that shit got crazy. My bitch ass out that whole thing.
This year, all the stuff that you bought, that people bought, or anything that fell on the ground was getting thrown. They were getting thrown, hitting people in the head, hitting people wherever. They were getting hit with cans. Apparently you could buy a basketball. They were throwing basketballs. They were throwing shoes. I seen at one point people were throwing Apple Watches, phones. People were throwing anything they could. And then that's when everybody gets so excited. And this is where shit starts to get crazy, because everybody just like became so compact, bro. It was actually crazy. Everybody became so compact.
I want to see some races. Who want to race?
Essentially, the physical rage is founded in an emotional split. Splitting of this type is present in the most emotionally unstable. What's interesting is how music has the ability to conjure this emotional split and cause involuntary reactions. This reaction is described by violent and aggressive movements of the body and mood. It is void of all reason and is purely bioenergetic and emotionally charged. It's primal, pleasurable, and base level in its nature. I call this flesh consciousness. Similar to what you would witness in heated sporting events or mystical ragery found in Osho's Rajneesh cult, for example. Whilst many casuals and weekend warriors occupy the more rational regions of the festival, non-ragers aim to leave home with actual thoughts and recallable memories, opposed to pure emotive accounts. The rager lacks maturity and rationality and is defined by debauchery. Though all categories can display this pattern of behavior, and many do. Let us set aside the physics-focused, fluid-based description of this event and assess its metaphysical implications. In other words, what is happening beneath the surface? The esoteric. When a body of individuals begins to behave in unison, a collective order is formed, a mass formation, a hive mind, if you will. Individual logic goes out the window, and persons within the group or crowd act on emotional impulses gathered from the energy of that group or crowd. The breakout of a riot would be a great example of this transference of behavior. It is a scientific fact that individuals act out of character and are willing to contradict their own standards when in a crowd of people.
But what happens when large numbers of individuals rapidly and randomly behave in ways that do not reflect societal norms? In sociology, this phenomenon is called collective behavior. Now, collective behavior is not the same thing as group behavior. Collective behavior typically is time limited. It involves short social interactions. Secondly, while collective behavior is time limited, it isn't socially limited. There are no social boundaries, and anyone is free to participate in a collective. The norms within groups are generally strongly held and well defined, whereas collective behavior produces norms that are weak and murky. Collective behavior generally violates widely held societal norms, and at times it can be very destructive. Certain group dynamics can oftentimes encourage people to engage in acts that they may consider deviant or wrong under normal circumstances, and these same group dynamics can happen in a collective as well. Now, sociologists have identified three basic types of collective behavior: fads, mass hysteria, and riots. You've probably heard all of these terms before, and you probably have a general idea what they are. Now, the second example of collective behavior is mass hysteria. Mass hysteria involves large groups of people who experience unmanageable delusions and anxiety at the same time. The reactions spread rapidly and reach more people through rumors and fear. Mass hysteria often takes the form of panicked reactions to negative news or a potential threat. A good example of mild mass hysteria is the reaction that often takes place when there's a chance of severe weather coming. Now, all major news outlets cover the forecast incessantly, and they induce fear and anxiety in large groups of people. The fear causes people to become crazed. They rush to the supermarket, they drive erratically, they become irrational. However, mass hysteria can also be the result of psychology, like when a large group of individuals suddenly believe they have the same illness and experience similar physical symptoms despite a lack of disease. This is sometimes called mass psychogenic illness or epidemic hysteria. A recent example of this came after the anthrax attacks in the United States. Immediately after there were reports of an anthrax attack, there were over 2,000 false anthrax alarms. Many individuals reported physical symptoms of anthrax infection, and they were afraid of exposure, although it was found that there was no risk of infection for those people because they weren't exposed to anthrax. They just thought they were. But regardless, it still induced symptoms in these patients that were real symptoms.
Monkey see, monkey do would be the most basic description of this. Here, the group becomes its own moving and acting object. At this point, the individuals in the group are no longer actually thinking independently, but feeling collectively. Purely acting on emotional impulse. This speaks to the potential danger of mass crowds, whether it is in the celebration of a home team victory or outrage following a controversial trial ruling, even the public opinion of an alleged pandemic. When a crowd is high in intensity, fear and excitement, darkness and rage, danger and idiocy awaits at every turn. This collective behavior is extremely powerful and can be looked at as a spirit form, a mass vibration that moves on its own, a mimetic. This can also be considered a type of egregore, an occult concept representing a distinct non-physical entity that arises from a collective group of people.
You know, what is an egregore, and why is it important to recognize these powerful forces or even entities that really shape our lives?
An egregore is a thought form, but it is a collective thought form. And it is a really a social control mechanism. It's a collective mindset. It's the collective unconscious that Jung speaks about. So when you go to work and they talk about corporate culture, that would be an egregore.
This spiritual entity therefore becomes the guide of the crowd. Some call it energy, a frequency, a vibe, but more accurate of a term is spirit. Knowing the nature and potential of massive crowds, it would follow that whatever type of familiar spirit is present is very important to consider. What type of spirit do you believe was present at the Astroworld Festival that humid Friday night? Yes, within the NRG Stadium, or Energy Stadium, the #1 independent producer of electric energy in the United States, nestled within the leading smart city developing region known as Houston, Texas, and key group within the Agenda 2030, formerly 21, Sustainable Developmental Goals of the Great Reset.
Raging is just a, they have a textbook, definition, but, in concerts, we've grown it to be just an experience of having fun. It's about just letting go and having fun, help others, love each other.
Now we must address the Rager and its key role in forming the foundation of this spirit form. Of most significance when regarding vibe and energy of Travis Scott concerts, the Rager spirit is that which defines its behavior and potency. When one thinks of Astroworld, psychological association immediately directs us to the concept of raging.
One Rager at a time. Hey, yo, I won't get on stage if y'all don't obey orders. Get down.
The Rager narcissistically tends to seek a gut-wrenching and clothing-drenching experience at the expense of others, under the guise of creating a loving and positive environment. In an upside-down world, that which is good is bad, and bad is always good. I guess the bigger problem becomes, what has fun transformed into for this generation, opposed to others? as normalized extremes, desensitization, identity confusion, and attention deficits begin to define the generation more and more. It does not seem to help our current crisis of meaning and being by promoting the empty and morbid trappings of Travis Scott image and melody. The sadism and masochism inherent in these new age movements in music, a sadgasm, abject hedonism, and hypersexuality as self-medicating options. Papa culture steps in to rear the increasingly fatherless generation. Popular culture, and today Papa culture, has a stronger pull and bigger influence on the current generations due to our modern overexposure to information and our inability to intellectually decipher truth from fact, real from hyperreal, and relevance from absurdity. This is resulting in an emergence of mass psychosis, infoglut creating disorienting subworlds within a tethered and digitally mediated existence. This creates a division of our ontological experience, or how we perceive reality. This also creates a division between our social and familial experiences. No generation prior has undergone this level of transformation and exposure, let alone at such speed. Harmful is an understatement when describing this level of constant distraction and information overload at such an important developmental stage, from childhood to adult. Hence the importance of Gen Z and its influence on the future of human civilization, a future that appears dark, detached, and delusional. One without a proper foundation on which to stand, because it has rotted away its roots and is making things up as it goes. Scott has become a familiar spirit. Amidst a mass conjuring culture, he has an effect on his listener, as if he were truly a type of crossroad, a portal leading to the other side, literally changing people, as it were. Some say his art and use of occult imagery is just trippy aesthetics or basic internet boy edginess. Yes, this might be objectively true, but this is short-sighted when one understands the nature of the occult world. Symbology is not just art for visual effect. Symbology is an optical language, a form of hidden communication. His music, a spell on the young. His message, a death note, a weapon of mass distraction, a soul-harvesting entity. Is he a type of software? Given he has no real voice, no real personality, no real connection to his fans outside of concepts and merchandise. He is simply enjoyed like any other video game or AI program.
I'm feeling devious. You're looking glamorous. Let's get mischievous and polyamorous. Wine and women and wonderful vices. Welcome to the cult of Dionysus.
The god of wine and winemaking, passion and fertility, music and dance, Dionysus represented the spontaneous and unrestrained aspects of human experience. Known as Eleutherius, the liberator, Dionysus produced euphoric states that freed his followers from both the constraints of society and their own inhibitions. Wherever music inspired dance, wherever wine led to revelry, wherever religion sparked ecstasy, Dionysus was thought to be at work.
What's going on in your head when you're on stage? What's up?
Chaos, man. The Dionysian shatters. Dionysos is the energy that shatters in order to bring forth. Anything that is going to be created involves the shattering of what was there before it. Creativity is a shattering business.
Chaos, man. I be just seeing like
the extreme. I just be, man, just seeing like a congregation or just like a group of like people, like individuals, whether young, old, middle age, just seeing them be able for like, what, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, however much time I got, you know, lose their fucking mind, man, to some music. That's like the best feeling ever. It's like better than any drug, like any piece of, like any like friendship, anything you got. That right there is like the best thing. It's like you saving somebody's life for like 40 minutes.
Experiencing Dionysian worship was intensely personal. Ecstasis, we get the word ecstasy from it. It means to stand outside of oneself, to be in the presence of a god. Dionysian worship was particular in this, in that worshippers, participants, stood outside of themselves and were in the presence of the god. He was there for them, with them, in their presence. And so it was an intensely personal experience that dissolved all other forms of identity that a person might have, the ties that bind.
Now, you could understand that this is very similar to how we would conceptualize the idea of surrendering to an instinct. You lose your ego, you lose your sense. You see a beautiful girl and you get this big kick of lust that comes from your body. It's not your ego, it's not your mind that's making that. It's not like you conceptualize lust right there and then. It's something that's deep inside of you, that's primitive, that comes up and grabs your mind. Now, this is exactly what people were worshipping through the god Dionysus. Dionysus is that symbol of that emotional state you have to get into.
Lose their fucking mind, man, to some music.
To experience crazy feelings, big feelings. The simplest way to understand this is to think about stuff like psychedelics. If you've ever been involved in psychedelic culture, you'll always hear this trope: surrender to the experience. Let go.
I feel like God put me here to like help out with people's like soul, man.
You just gotta be like the youngest fan that ever do this right here, bro. 9 years old, this is crazy right here. Everybody make some noise for this kid right here. I'm gonna do this song one more time because I want you to do this song with me. You understand what I'm saying? What song you want? You want Goosebumps one more time? Perfect. Let's do it.
Unfortunately, Scott is a role model in the lives of many. This all is truly much more than entertainment. Youth require guidance. They lack an experienced and consistent frame to work from and see themselves in the world for what they truly are. They have no real metric to calculate, figure, or decipher what values are proper, adequate for living, and good for life. Scott fills this hole with a witch's brew and provides them a crooked frame through which to see the world. This way, he is in fact a soul snatcher, not a soul saver. Darkness covers the populations. The music seems to reciprocate this idea. Here, a wave of confusion, narcissism, and mental illnesses prevail and are inverted to the degree that they become honorable. We can consider this time the onset of a new age noir, a cultural decay, or an omé.
New Age Noir. Mystic, esoteric, and occult New Age concepts which are promoted to primarily Black and urban youth. Also, a style or genre of New Age marked by a mood of pessimism, fatalism, and menace.
As a result, powers and principalities gain control of the hearts and minds of men. In lieu of anything meaningful, good, or worthwhile, the present moment is emphasized, and the most base level appetites become the prime focus in life. Sexual and drug-based gluttony is provided a soundtrack by the musical gods, and Dionysus is praised once more. As a Dionysian figure, La Flame quenches the dying thirst of his audience, liberating their flesh through transgression. Interestingly, Scott's music is the embodiment of our current postmodern digital nativism. He fulfills that emptiness that defines an era, an elixir and salve. If poison could heal wounds, he reshapes the future to the tune of abject hedonism in designer fabrics, a digital pornographer of the heart and corrupter of the spirit. Yet Travis Scott is a mere man, a broken artist seeking meaning through his messages. He appears to be trapped in a machine and led by his lowest self, a corporate system that owns his body and an entity that owns his soul. The question is not, will he survive the rodeo? The question is, will he escape the grip of the evil one? Will he choose fan worship over repentance? Indeed, he is nothing without the masses that follow him and make him real. The moment they cease to listen, he vanishes like running tears. Though his wailing flute calls them, a spirit within the message, the tones and frequencies, his massive image and prestige melts the hearts of millions. Through the mouth of idols, the God of this earth has spoken.
We didn't open the mosh pit when we first started. We had no space to even open the mosh pit. So we're jumping around, and about 2 minutes into it, we're starting to realize we can't breathe. We cannot breathe that great. So I'm talking to my friend. I'm talking to him. I'm telling him to breathe calmly, stay calm, be patient, relax, don't panic, because if you start to panic, that's when things go wrong. And what do you think happened? Everyone in there, they don't have the same people in their ear telling them what I'm telling him. Of course, people started to panic. It was really tight in there. Maybe it may have been people's first time coming, may have been people's first concert. People started to panic. I hear people around me saying, let me out, I want to get out, I'm getting out. That was the only thing on people's heads. I'm getting out of here.
The word panic derives from antiquity and is a tribute to the ancient god Pan, another Greek god that Scott seems to embody. They intimately share the use of music and messaging of hypersexuality to lull their flocks. Pan, known as the god of the wild, possibly the original rager, whilst Scott makes sure to let the wild ones in. It is no surprise that he, as well as his mentor Kanye, both are heavily influenced by the occultic works of the Panic art movement, defined by all the same spirits and bodily appetites of the lowly. Astroworld is not a piece of art. It is a place for worship and pain. Scott has built an abusement park for the lost, a golden calf for the lit, and a treasure trove for his masters.
That day itself felt weird. I don't know what it was about it, but I went there and it just felt weird. Something felt off.
So then, once one person fell, it was like a domino effect. Everybody starts falling. So everybody's trying to stay up. People are trying to help each other up, but people are being kind of selfish at the moment. I'm not gonna lie, people are being kind of selfish. And the thing that made it even crazier is the music was still going.
And caused a stack in the crowd. Now, in all the instances that I've seen, that I've been a part of, this mushing and shit, people just get back up, people are helped back up. But in this instance, I guess people were trampled, and people were being stepped on, and people were being jumped on, and it never stopped.
About to go crazy, about to rage. Let's see you guys there.
Something about Astroworld Festival was spiritually different this round. Echoed by many goers that night, a dark vibe seemed to dominate the experience. What goes on at Travis Scott concerts are beyond the typical vibe and behavior of massive festivals historically. They simply are unique, and not in a good way. They distort the morale and camaraderie of traditional mosh pit culture. Unlike Public Enemy, for instance, who might have been the earliest example of moshing in hip-hop culture with their hit Bring the Noise, featuring rock band Anthrax. DMX, Wu-Tang, and several others adopted the method of moshing yet kept it to its principles and philosophy, borrowed from the punk and metal scenes that preceded them. Ragers have not continued this legacy. They misinterpret the performance and warp the very purpose of moshing. Catharsis, in-group membership, loyalty, release, and pain-defying excitement. All these ideals are lost in the juvenile, rootless, and haphazard display of this new age rage culture and its morbidly dark spirit. Scott has created an off-brand, punkish anti-culture that has no real connection to its influences. It creates anti-rules of its own, practices a sort of personal anarchy that creates an every-man-for-himself environment, occupied by detached and disenfranchised digital natives fulfilling extended childhoods. Deracinated rage trapped in a pool of narcissism that stomps on bodies in the name of all things lit. Some use the moniker simply to appear cool or part of the in crowd, whilst others fully embody its chaotic philosophies and dark spirit. There is of course nuance to ragerism like there would be in anything else. Overall, Scott has produced an aimless cult to fulfill his personal god complex.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And just Pharaoh, man, I just feel like I'm a king, or like the music is just God level. I use this word God level all the time.
Very.
Like the beats, the drums, all God level, man. Working with Kanye West, man, it's like
That's on another level.
That's kind of that. He kind of like brought that out in extension.
Jay-Z's Magna Carta.
Jay-Z's a smart guy, man, and it's so awesome because I was just with him when I was in New York.
Okay.
And
And did he drop any jewels? Like,
oh
what
man,
did he learn?
yeah, man. Like Jay-Z told me, man, he's like, man, he has a power, and artists need to stop trying to compete with each other.
Okay.
Link up and gain the power, man. He told me something that changed my life. He said we can all obtain money, right? But gaining the power is some whole another level.
How did he define power versus money?
He said money is something that you can get off the streets. You can get it from corporations. Power is something that no one can take from you.
Through his use of sonic vibe and manipulation of his audience's psychoacoustic experiences, layered with substances and sensual messaging, he has placed a spell on his listeners by branding his dark spirit into a membership group with which he can then scale his success as an artist and elongate his influence on the generation. Rage, to feel or express violent, uncontrollable anger. Now it can be said that, when he uses the term rage, it's in a figurative manner, not literal. Yet at the same time, when you observe the behavior, not simply the words, it is very clear that this element of rage is quite literal on a physical and psychological level. An attempt at gaslighting the audience has been the norm post-Astroworld, and telling us the sky is green when we can all see it is blue has been the method of understanding.
What do you hate about it? What do you love about it?
I love the chaos, I love the blood, I love the sweat, I love the joy, I love the love.
Okay, so this album, why did you choose this cover? Take a look at this. What made you be like, you wanna know what? I'm gonna be an action figure.
Man, I felt like I should have been born like that, man.
love one another and step into that, you know?
I mean, I think that's a part of it, but the music does encourage people to be violent at these shows.
I mean,
that's what the rage is about.
Art is the externalization of inner struggles. Rage is a manifestation within that process. What this inherently describes is emotional instability, though in moderation, there can be cathartic use of rage. But as a rule, it only defines a deep-seated pathology within the psyche of a person, namely a malfunction in the structure of the self.
Hey yo, man, this is what I think about Travis Scott, man. I don't give a fuck about no fucking rules. Everybody in this motherfucker with me. All y'all with me, with the youth. We run this shit.
The Peter Pan syndrome would be the perfect example of our dilemma here. In other words, Travis Scott has some serious issues. Issues he has yet to work out in his adult life, to the degree that he has truly not developed into an adult at all and has created a pathway for himself to continue on as an irresponsible and hedonistic child, chasing the pubescent pleasures of intoxication and ejaculation. The problem is, he is rich, famous, and extremely influential in the Generation Z demographic. His scene and cult of personality tends to attract those that identify with similar pathologies. To add, given most of his audience is rather young and underdeveloped socially and intellectually, it would make sense why his messaging appeals the way it does. Classic example of blind leading the blind. Some say they simply enjoy the vibes, but vibes work on a frequency. Vibes are spirit. It is no longer a mystery when it comes to what type of spirit Scott is expelling. A spirit and philosophy that feeds on the most feeble-minded, corrupted at heart and lowest in spirit. A flesh consciousness that turns men into boys and women into delicacies. Nothing loving, productive, righteous, godly, positive, or meaningful describes Travis Scott's message. Philanthropy is a mere cover and walk in the park for the mega rich. But maybe we are barking down the wrong alleyway, and maybe his music is not meant for these ideals. Travis Scott has never stood as an emblem of virtue or world peace. And Travis Scott isn't the only one creating this anti-world within the music scene. We have Lil Uzi Vert, Billie Eilish, Post Malone, and of course possibly Satan in a snowsuit, Playboi Carti. What is this music anyway? It surely is not hip-hop. These artists vehemently state themselves that it isn't.
I don't consider myself like hip-hop. I don't want you to put me up like next to them just like, some of them niggas just like straight corny and shit.
Maybe it fills a void. Maybe it's designated for spazzing or spacing out on a daily basis. Maybe it's only meant for people with emotional dysregulation and substance abuse issues. In a postmodern society defined by nihilism and narcissism, such ideas make sense. And maybe like some of us had our raver phase or hippie phase, young and dumb kids today will have their rager phase and eventually mature out of it. Or not. Maybe demonic / degenerate anti-art like Scott's has a place in this wicked world. Of course it does.
Just for you, a world of fun that's bright and new. All the shows you will see and the rides you will ride. What fun you will find when you look inside. Sneak preview.
Coca-Cola presents Sneak Preview at Astroworld. Save $4 on your Astroworld ticket with any can from Coca-Cola.
Come on, we're open just for you. Astroworld.
If Jacques Webster is not Travis Scott, who is Jacques Webster?
Man, like, I turned my phone on. This is like a real story. You know, I had like 8 texts from like T.I. and like his friends and shit, and they wanted me to come to the studio. That was like the change of like Jacques becoming Scott.
Like the ultimate goings-on of the Astroworld event, we will never truly know. Possibly, Scott's music and career is a total farce that squats on the shoulders of that old term poptimism. Since we all know popularity, virality, and views can be digitally manipulated by those manning data platforms, and faking it until you make it is pretty much the standard around these parts. But Scott's movement might be more than just digital junk food for a dumbed down and hyper-emotional generation. Could it also be pure propaganda funded and manufactured by corporations and social scientists to socially engineer an entire generation for a future of auto-tuned AI pop musician programs experienced virtually in haptic suits and only experienced in person if you have a biometric tracking device?
For a show like this, nobody is planning for this to happen. So how do you even prepare for something like this to happen?
But even I was thinking in ways like tech solutions. You know, people come into these festivals with these bands that only scan you in, right? You have all type of tech now that can track your heart, can track your, oxygen levels, can track if you're gonna be sick. You can put things now if you're gonna be, get lost. It's all type of ways now. I feel like that can be the band that only gets you access to entry or to a food line or to food trucks can now be solvable to helping save lives, I
don't know. It's a bit confusing right now to be a Travis Scott fan.
It's gonna change concerts forever. It'll never be, it's like the 9/11 of concerts. It's like the 9/11 of concerts.
Think about it. To blame this event on incompetence of organizers or pure negligence on the part of Scott is borderline delusional. Astrofest 3 has been in preparation for years, building off of an artist's live event experience that reaches back to as early as 2013. Not only is Scott experienced in the goings-on of Rager events and planning, but Live Nation is even more experienced. Does shadiness seem to be present? Of course. Who designs literal death traps like that? Amidst all the other strange mishaps that night, Scott's management team TriStar is buried in controversy, and Live Nation is notorious for deaths at its events. But more importantly, so-called concert safety is the perfect red herring to bring in new forms of authoritarian technologies under the guise of keeping us stupid animals safe. 2020 was the introduction of all of this, it seems. Arguably the largest social experiment mankind has ever encountered. Are we to believe it is solely because of an alleged pandemic that Astroworld 2 happened online only? The surface answer would be yes, we were in a pandemic. But a deeper perspective points to a much bigger picture. the evolution of live events in a digital society, also known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Interestingly, the metaverse was hinted to the public 1 week before the Astroworld ritual event, and has changed the industry of performance forever. Live events are expensive, risky, and present a big liability for planners. Human beings, when in large number, can present irrational behavior, especially when emotions are highly charged. Let's also remember, live events are about marketing a product, not fulfilling the entertainment needs of random people. Television and the internet does that just fine already. If we were all simply plugged into a box by wires or wireless, their jobs would be much easier with much less risk. Some say our future is dark, others maintain it is bright, but in all actuality, the future is virtual.
Tesla Suit is a human-to-digital interface, the only of its kind, designed to simulate experience and accelerate mastery in the physical world. Tesla Suit inputs haptic feedback to any area of the body, from gentle touch to feelings of physical exertion and temperature, and outputs motion capture and biometrics. In high-stakes industries, where errors can cost millions of dollars or human lives, Tesla Suit reduces risk by training safety protocol into reflex. Tesla Suit. Master reality.
Was Scott used to forge the precedent for metaverse interactivity when he aired the first live virtual concert via the popular youth-targeted game, Fortnite? Travis Scott as the ambassador of our virtual future. What about the already created and ready for blockchain rollout, virtual Astroworld? Trackable wristbands and biometric monitoring for in-person fun is the future? A company called Buddy has already stepped in with tech solutions for the problem via phone tracking application. More big tech oversight and control is the solution? This all seems rather convenient, does it not? The zooted concert safety evangelist, Cactus Jack. After all, he wants to be the #1 voice for this, touting the dire need for this new idea, apparently, calling for outdoor event reform as if concert safety has yet to be done right.
I feel like the first things first, before anything, is that we address, a lot of safety concerns. I think the first things first is that, because not even just for me, you don't want other, artists to have to go and take a part of that trauma, take a part of that experience, take a part of that, that fear. You don't want concert goers to still be a part of that fear. You want them to feel safe.
Scott as a patsy used to usher in preconceived biometric technologies for the general admission to outdoor events, all under the guise of safety and security? But maybe we are reaching with this conclusion. Only time will tell. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, behind the lit vibes and sensuality, Scott is nothing more than a symbol of the state. He promotes a rebellious spirit that walks the generations into a mouth of totalitarianism and solution-based control mechanisms. In other words, since you animals cannot behave, we will set things in order for you. A new order. As he promotes a false sense of individualism, he sets up the masses for collective enslavement to the post-COVID biosecurity state.
What the fuck? Never have I seen some shit like this, bro.
Is it just a coincidence that Congress happens to be interested in this event more than much larger issues in the country? Not if a new rollout of technology and industry regulation awaits us all down the pike. Leveraging Gen Z by holding fun hostage. Lockdowns, distancing, masking, this new health requirement for almost everything. Fear-based mind control and routine restriction has been the environment for 2 very important years now. This is an exceptionally successful method when one considers the inherent importance of fun and social events in the lives of young people. It is akin to the baby's bottle. Why is he so valuable to the machine? Getting the generations in a type of mass formation? How can anyone consciously claim this art is not demonic? He is an embodiment of Peter Pan, shaping a generation of lost boys. As he played the Pied Piper to 12 million youth on Fortnite to demonstrate this. Interestingly, in 1968, the year Astroworld opened, on its debut it aired a promo for the amusement park on ABC that featured, of course, the Pied Piper. What is an arena festival compared to a virtual event anyway? His Fortnite show made every concert combined look like an episode of Small Wonder. 12 million virtually is a little bit more than 50K in person, wouldn't you think? Who wouldn't want to be the #1 voice of such numbers in a new virtual music economy? Similar to the change from physical CDs and album sales to MP3s, iPods, and iTunes, where instead of physically buying our music, we began virtually acquiring it via computer processing. Similarly, we might even begin experiencing live music through computer processing. We are simply undergoing the next stage in technological evolution at the expense of human development, all under the guise of crisis, safety, and security. Yes, the Peter Pan of the game. He truly is forming his own version of Never Never Land. He never has to grow up, and the industry for him presents itself as an eternal womb. His next album is titled Utopia, which simply means nowhere. Yes, a Neverland. Whilst his event took on the title Dystopia, which simply means a great suffering. This is no surprise when one gathers that the Astrofest event is more than a harmless opportunity for release or catharsis, and more of a masochistic trudge through a day of suffering for the glory of an idol and a superficial claim to group membership. Sounds like social engineering to me. I mean, think about it. Travis Scott, Tavistock, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. And I'm sure Travis Scott loves you all as much as he says he does. The sentiment he constantly sends out makes complete sense when one comes to the conclusion that fans are fundamentally customers. And Travis Scott is fundamentally a brand, a corporate asset divvied up between shareholders and investors. He is the McDonald's of art form. It would only follow that he also sells Happy Meals. Happy Meals. Interesting. His fame and glory only appeals to an audience that envies such qualities, and the rest are merely lulled into a trance-like slumber due to his wizardry and production skill behind the boards. Most really do not know why they like the music they like. It is a compelling force that works beneath the surface. This is why it is so important to address music culture and be wary of the messaging one allows in their mind and heart. Though I find it as a harsh description, Astroworld events are often depicted as a drug circus for teenagers, lowlives, and underdeveloped adults. The more visual evidence and accounts of Astrofest one gathers, the harder it is to argue against such a brash description. Though all goers of these events cannot be painted with such a brush, ragers seem to provide the paint with which a bigger picture can be made. And to add fuel to La Flame, when one discovers Scott and his anti-world transcends race, nationality, and even genre, and is being deemed as the most influential person in youth culture. Houston is not the only one with a problem.
Music. What's the point of music? Niggas don't know. It's not always to have fun. It's not always to have fun. Sometimes it's to help people find themselves because music is frequency programming. If I play with those frequencies, right? I can target certain parts of the mind. If I want you to astral project, or if I want you to go to sleep, or if I want you to go into a meditative state, I can make my music do that. Music is frequency. What frequency are you being fed?